Amazon MGM Studios and Prime Video are up to their old tactics when it comes to The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. They have deployed their actors to attack fans of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings books and people that want to actually have Amazon legitimately adapt a second age story that stays true to Tolkien's actual works rather than the bastardization that Amazon MGM Studios and Prime Video have undertaken with this show. Leading the charge in this campaign is actress Morfydd Clark, who plays Galadriel. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com, and Morfydd Clark did an interview with Elle to promote the show, where she said, I was just totally unprepared when season 1 came out. I've seen a really dark side of what it means to be someone who anyone can write a message to on Instagram, and a really lovely side. She provides absolutely zero evidence of what this dark side is, doesn't provide any evidence of what the lovely side is either. She went on to claim that she received, quote, negativeness primarily from men. So she obviously is trying to play victim, claiming that she is being sent negative messages from men, obviously trying to paint men who like The Lord of the Rings, like J.R.R. Tolkien's work, as negative, that are criticizing her portrayal as Galadriel and how the show depicts Galadriel. She then explained that, quote, lots of the criticisms I got from some fans were for the things making other people feel liberated while watching Galadriel. So again, she's talking about criticism. She isn't really talking about anything, doesn't seem like anything overboard. It's just probably people expressing how they don't like the way the show portrays Galadriel, don't like the way that she is acting as Galadriel, because it is contrary to how J.R.R. Tolkien wrote the character when this show is supposed to be taking place. And she elaborated, saying what certain people didn't necessarily enjoy about her, other people did. She takes up space. She's unapologetic. I didn't want her to act like a human woman who's been taught not to be abrasive. Every other character I've played, because they're human women, there's shame built in. In season 1, Galadriel doesn't have that. I'm glad I committed to that. She makes all kinds of absolutely disastrous mistakes. We're not going to get into that. Covered that in lots of other videos. Done guest appearances on the One Ring channel with my good friend Jonathan Watson. If you want to figure out what is going on, why I think this portrayal of Galadriel is absolutely despicable and a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. Showrunner J.D. Payne also informed Elle and attempted to invoke J.R.R. Tolkien to justify the massacre he and Clark committed to Galadriel. Tolkien gives us hints that Galadriel was prideful, that she was a warrior at various times in her history. That's absolutely not true whatsoever. I think there's like one line that they have tried to completely blow out of proportion to claim that she was a warrior. She never was. She never was a Joan of Arc figure whatsoever, which they're desperately trying to turn this character into, and which they have. They have turned a character into, except Joan of Arc was a much more virtuous woman in real life compared to how they portray Galadriel as this crass, awful woman who literally commits disgusting crimes in order to try and achieve her goals. Payne added, we said, how can we take her from being an impetuous, prideful young warrior to the wise lady of the woods? So they're trying to justify, like, oh, we're taking her through a journey, even though she's been around for thousands of years already and has been learning. Even before this, she's been learning from one of the Maya. Like, it's just absolutely disgusting. It is an insult. It is an absolute insult. And these people are continually lying to you and trying to gaslight people into buying and trying to watch their slot. Fortunately, no one's actually doing that. We'll get to that in a little bit. But this is my thoughts on this. This is all a giant gaslight, and it's clearly part of a failing marketing strategy. One they attempted with the first season. If you recall, Prime Video went out of its way to cast actors that look nothing like the characters that Tolkien described. They cast Lenny Henry, Sofia Novetti, and Ismael Cruz Cordova as a hobbit, dwarf, and elf, respectively. They've repeated this in season 2 with some of their characters. They then instructed the actors to antagonize Tolkien fans. This is my speculation here. There's absolutely no other reason why these people went out to say, like, oh, we're pushing our diversity, we're modernizing Tolkien, we're doing this for the modern audience. Like, this is literally what these people did, and this is clearly was instruction from, in my opinion, Amazon MGM Studios and Prime Video. I think it was just Amazon Studios at the time. They hadn't acquired MGM or it hadn't been approved by the government, etc. But this is what Novetti told PA Media at the time at San Diego Comic-Con. This is back 2022. So it's before the first season release. She says, we are redressing the balance within the film and television industry, and of course this franchise. And I hope lots of franchises moving forward. So this is clearly the talking point that they were going with. We're redressing a balance. Because Tolkien didn't have it, we have to fix that. He was wrong. What he wrote, that was wrong. We need to fix this. We need to fix it now, and I'm here to fix it. Just absolutely sickening behavior here. Furthermore, she declared that they were intentionally butchering Tolkien's lore in order to indoctrinate the modern audience they hope to capture with the show. To be part of creating accessibility for generations to come, for new generations, this is their version of Tolkien. This is what my daughter will see of Tolkien's work. So clearly trying to create something that Tolkien never wrote and trying to inculcate people into buying into this is the actual story of what Tolkien wrote. They're literally acting in malice to rewrite what Tolkien actually wrote in order to dupe people into thinking that's what Lord of the Rings is really about, when it's not. It's not anything about what these people have created. It's definitely not how he depicted it. Next, Novetti then elaborated on how the show is attempting to rewrite Tolkien's work for woke sensibility. She says, it's their time and it's so important, and I hope many people will see this fantasy and be able to relate to it. This is a reflection of the world we live in. There are many, and we are different, and we will embrace and discover and peel back and learn and educate and be educated. A giant word salad just to basically say we are pushing wokeness with this show, and that's exactly what they did. And we can only do that when we embrace and love our differences. That's absolutely not true. There's nothing wrong with having differences, but at the end of the day, what unites people are similarities. You're not united by differences. Ismael Cruz Cordova told the Associated Press there will no longer, or he was asked, he said, there will no longer be a time where you can say there are no elves of color. So we erased that one, That's what he said, actually. He then added, this conversation will never be there. No, I'm an elf. The next person that comes after me won't have to talk about this. That's what it means to me. I always say that if you can see it, you can imagine it. Then if you can imagine it, you can create it. He's like implying that somehow elves can be real. They're not. They're fiction. This is utterly ridiculous. Again, this was clearly a coordinated campaign created by Amazon MGM Studios to try to deflect from their dog crap season 1 that they created. Lenny Henry responded to a statement from GQ. GQ said this, in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy 20 years ago, there were no black characters, but this show is different. It feels like the big new fantasy franchises are finally diversifying. And this is what Lenny Henry said in response. There's a real sense of trying to be more inclusive than we were in this world. House of the Dragon star Steve Toussaint keeps saying, the purists were saying things about his casting in the show. God bless them. They have no trouble believing in a dragon, but they do have trouble believing that a black person could be a member of the court or that a black person could be a hobbit or an elf. It's hard to believe because that's not actually how they wrote them. How Tolkien wrote it. It's not how j.r.r. Martin wrote it. That's why it's hard to believe. No one has any issues having black people in fantasy stories. There's lots of them. No one has any problems with that. It's a ridiculous argument. He's only trying to make this argument because he knows that he is changing the actual story in the lore and how the original creators created these characters. And actually, storytellers can do what they want because they're storytellers. So there he goes. He's like, it doesn't really matter anymore. We can just do whatever we want. We can change whatever we want. Who cares? In the reimagining of these stories from 1,000 years ago, they are not part of the canon that everybody knows. This is a reimagining and reweaving of the story. So he literally is admitting that they're completely changing the story, right? And Rings of Power showrunners JD Payne and Patrick McKay have just gone, what if? The greatest 2 words in storytelling. What if? No, those are the absolutely worst 2 words in storytelling. They completely ruin immersion whatsoever. Marvel Studios found that out the hard way when they did their whole multiverse crap. It works in the comics, but it does not work. It does not work in their big MCU at all. We then saw this escalate to the official Rings of Power account on X, where they accused Tolkien fans of being racist. The account posted, "We stand in solidarity with our cast. Hashtag you're all welcome here." Interestingly, it used to be like the account was called LOTR on Prime. They've now relabeled it, and I think it's just like Rings of Power. Yeah, the Rings of Power now. So they changed their actual handle for it. But they then shared 3 images with the first rating. "We, the cast of Rings of Power, stand together in absolute solidarity and against the relentless racism, threats, harassment, and abuse some of our castmates of color are being subjected to on a daily basis. We refuse to ignore it or tolerate." Again, zero evidence of any of this actually happening, just trying to push this narrative. Again, I think this is a complete and utter PR initiative, marketing stunt that they used in the wake of Star Wars trying to use it with Obi-Wan Kenobi. It did not work out for Star Wars, and we know it didn't work out for Lord of the Rings either, which we'll get to in a little bit here. In the second image, they wrote this: "J.R.R. Tolkien created a world which, by definition, is multicultural, a world in which free peoples from different races and cultures join together in fellowship to defeat the forces of evil." Rings of Power reflects that. It does not. It does not. Absolutely does not. My good friend Jonathan Watson describes the hobbits as dirty little sociopaths because they literally let their fellow hobbits die for the smallest of reasonings. "Oh, you broke your hand. Well, too bad. Looks like we're just going to leave you behind to get eaten by the wolves." Doesn't reflect what Tolkien wrote whatsoever. That is the opposite of how a hobbit would act. It's sickening. What they've done to his world is sickening, and it's clearly been done out of malice. "Our world has never been all white. Middle Earth is not all white. BIPOC belong in Middle Earth, and they are here to stay." No one was ever saying that Middle Earth was all white. They're clearly the Higher Dream. There are clearly people from different areas and have different skin tones, but the elves didn't. The elves didn't. The Númenóreans didn't. The hobbits didn't. And neither did the dwarves. So that's a problem. That's a problem. It's like, again, you put it back on them. Would you have white people in Wakanda? No, you would not. You would not. And you wouldn't be accusing people of racism either if they were defending Wakanda being all Africans. You wouldn't do that. Finally, all our love and fellowship go out to the fans supporting us, especially fans of color who are themselves being attacked simply for existing in this fandom. We see you, your bravery and endless creativity, your cosplays, fan cams, fan art, and insights make this community a richer place and remind us of our purpose. You are valid, you are loved, and you belong. You're an integral part of Lord of the Rings family. Thanks for having our backs. So there you go. You can see it right there. I took a screenshot and included it in. And this narrative that fans who were criticizing the show were racist was also pushed by Clark a few months later when she posted this to her Instagram stories. "Anyone sending hate to my black castmates, get off my page, get off the internet, and shut up." She then shared a short video of her castmate Charles Edwards, who plays as Celebrimbor, making a hand motion that reveals the phrase "shut the F up." And she would seemingly ask in a caption below the video, who made this. You can see it right there. Took the screenshots of it. Obviously, Instagram stories deletes, but these are screenshots I took back in 2022. So you can see that there. So she was all part of this narrative as well. She just did her part with the Instagram story posts. She provided no evidence of any hate being sent to her castmates, and this obvious marketing stunt did not work whatsoever, which I've kind of said throughout this video here. And we know this because Kim Masters at The Hollywood Reporter reported in April 2023 that 63% of people who watched part of the first episode did not finish the entire series. This is what she wrote in her write-up. "While Amazon, like other streamers, provides only limited data, and internally it held information even more closely than usual on the series, sources confirm that The Rings of Power had a 37% domestic completion rate. Customers who watched the entire series. That means 63% of people did not finish this show. That is absolutely abysmal. Their campaign calling Tolkien fans racist for wanting them to respect the lore did not work. People saw this show for what it was, saw that it was an absolute abomination, saw that it was Tolkien in name only, and immediately turned it off. For those outside the United States, the completion rate was higher. Masters shared this. Overseas, it reached 45%. A 50% completion rate would be a solid but not spectacular result, according to insiders. So terrible, terrible completion rate for this show. People abandoned this en masse. And I don't think this strategy is going to work for season 2. It did not work in season 1. I don't know why they're trying this over and over again. Well, I do know why. They want to push this whole agenda, this woke agenda. They want to try and double down on it. They've spent so much money on this that it's hard for them to just say, nah, we got to cancel this, which is what they should have done. They should have dropped the hammer on this, taken the pill that like literally lets you get out of the matrix so you can see reality and see that all of these corporations are abandoning this stuff. The only ones who are staying with it is Disney. But we've seen Tractor Supply, we've seen Lowe's, Ford is now coming out against this, getting rid of their DI programmings, their DI programs, stopping funding degenerate pride parades. Harley Davidson, we're getting multiple major corporations eliminating DEI departments from their company because this stuff is a loser. It does not sell. It creates division. And ultimately, it drives people away from your product. I highly doubt that this show was selling the books that they thought it was going to sell. Can you imagine if they sold the amount of books that Fallout 4 sold after they had a somewhat decent success with Fallout 4 with the Fallout show? Or if they had a legitimately good Lord of the Rings show? How many books Amazon could sell? They're just hurting themselves because this stuff does not work. They hire these actors that are just activists, and they continue to insult us and think that we're going to watch their show after they repeatedly denigrate us over and over and over again in the media. No, we aren't. Kim Masters shows that we tuned out. 63% did not finish this show. I think that the second week that this show shows up on Nielsen will be below 1 billion minutes watched. I think that it'll probably be over 1 billion minutes watched in this first week here because they're releasing 3 episodes at once. So I think it'll be over 1 billion. But I do not think that it will be over 1 billion in week 2 because I think those 63% of people aren't coming back. They're not coming back for season 2. They just aren't. This is going to be Acolyte levels of disaster for Amazon and for the Rings of Power. But let me know what you guys make of Morfydd Clark trying to recreate the failed marketing campaign of attacking fans all over again for season 2. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.